Okay, let's just jump right into it. I don't want to bore you. Let's learn something. So we can all get started just by going to a browser. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to type in REPL.js. We're looking for this link right here, replit.com. We're going to click on that. It's going to bring you to this screen right here. There's a specific reason why I made you type it in like this. If you just went straight to Replit, it's going to, well, to put it lightly, this site is constantly trying to get you to sign up for their software, which that's fine. It's actually really good software. But for our purposes, this screen right here is actually far more useful than their main software, which can get a little bit esoteric. This is all I really care about right here. This is called a REPL. That's just a fancy tech term. It's a program that allows you to interact with a programming language and run that code immediately and see some output from that code. They're incredibly useful. I use these things all the time, and with this site we have access to tons of different languages, so this is going to be good stuff. I'm clicking on JavaScript. We're going to start with JavaScript. This language is used on about 98% of the internet, or some absurd number like that. It's pretty much on every website you've ever encountered. It's essentially the backbone of the internet. That's what we're going to start off with. It's a good intermediate language. It's not too hard, not too easy. It's like, some languages are closer to English than others. Some languages are closer to the CPU, so they are, a couple of steps closer to getting converted to binary, because that's what a computer reads, right? JavaScript's somewhere in the middle. Languages like Ruby, they read very much like English. They're a little bit slower because of that, but in today's world of super fast internet speeds and our computation from CPUs and stuff, it's really not that big of a deal. But we're going to start with JavaScript. Okay, so what was this? This is a way of printing something to the console. Every language has something like this, whether it just says print or puts like in Ruby that we just saw. But in JavaScript, it's called console.log. And then in there, if we run this code, it's going to output right here, hello world. We put in there right there. So what I want to do here is, right off the bat, give you some principles that you can use to learn any language. The first and most basic principle of all is that there are something called variables. A variable is just a way of saving information in memory to use later. Pretty straightforward, right? Now in JavaScript, we use something called var, and var is a way of declaring a variable. Var stands for variable. So I could do something like this, var variable, and that's just the name of this variable, equals 1. Just going to toss that right there in that console log. Print that. Look at that. We got 1 right there. Sweet. Shift into Ruby. Now in Ruby, don't have to use var. We can just say, hey, variable equals 1. Puts variable. Look at that. We got 1. What about Python? I love Python. Same deal. Python's very similar to Ruby. So variable equals 1. Toss this thing in here in this print command. Look at that. We got 1. Let's do a little bit more dated language. Let's do PHP. PHP is a little bit different. You have to declare that it is a PHP file using this right here. And instead of var, we don't have var in here. We have $signs. That's how we declare a variable. So $sign variable equals 1. And I'm going to show you something here. This is actually going to break. And that's okay. Just happy accidents, right? So watch what happens when we do this. Exit status 255. Syntax error, unexpected print. Why is that unexpected? Well, it's because some languages have Well, it's very specific rules, and PHP has one where you have to have a semicolon at the end of every statement. If you don't, it's just going to break. And a statement is just any sort of one continuous line of code, and actually it's not necessarily a line of code. I could continue this on for several lines, but at the end of your statement, you need this semicolon. So we run it now, we get back 1. So all of this is just to say that, like for instance, if I just knew that every language has something called a variable, I can pretty much just Google search my way to anything, to learning any language. So I'm gonna play around with a language that I've never worked with ever. What is this? Lua. We got print hello world here. I don't know if that's a continuation of what we just used earlier. I don't think it is, but well, let's just see. How do I declare a variable in Lua? You don't. That's a weird way of saying that. That doesn't make sense at all. So when researching things, the best way to learn something is to use Occam's razor. Use that principle that the simplest answer is probably the correct one. If you get back a response that is really complex or overly complex, what I've found in my experience is that it's probably not the best way to do it. Can I declare variables? A variable is nothing more than a name given to a storage area. Okay, so it kind of looks like, I'm getting the impression here that I can just sort of, here we go. I can just, let's do variable equals 1. And let's just say, how do I, print, standard print, look at that. Okay, so I can just use print. Print. Boom, look at that, we got 1. So this is how you learn. This is how you learn new languages very quickly. You just, once you understand these very common principles that are familiar to all these programming languages, you're unstoppable. You can learn any language you want very quickly. I hope this helped. Thank you for watching.